After all, they couldn't really fight him. How many lives would you have if you dared to fight a prince? Such a thing naturally alarmed old Madame Sunday. She arrived almost at the same time as Duchess Ding. Seeing this chaotic scene and the wanton and insolent Jin Xin Wang, Duchess Ding was so angry that her whole body trembled. Her fingernails almost sank into her flesh. She really wanted to tear him apart. It must be said that old Madame Sun, who was used to the wind and waves and didn't get angry easily, was also angry. Originally, she had already handed over the power of the backyard, so she didn't need to come forward. However, she was worried that her daughter-in-law would do something irrational. After all, because of Sister Jia Er's matter, this daughter-in-law was almost crazy. Who dared to talk about Sister Jia Er? She even ignored her own identity and immediately turned into an old hen protecting her calf. Old Madame Sun didn't expect her to be like this. No matter if she was sincere or hypocritical, or if she had other intentions, the pitiful hearts of parents in the world were pitiful. Even though she knew that what she did was wrong, more than one or two people came to her to complain, and she turned a blind eye. But now, they all knew that they must restrain themselves and force themselves to suppress their anger. The servants were rude and offended Wang Ye, asking for Wang Ye's forgiveness. When old Madame Sun opened her mouth, Li Hongyuan finally stopped and turned around. Ben Wang thought that the masters of this Ding Guofu were all dead. Listening to his words, he really pulled the hatred as soon as he opened his mouth. It wasn't enough to tear him apart alive. I didn't know that Wang Ye had graced us with your presence. Asking for Wang Ye's forgiveness. This prince has always been a magnanimous person. As the saying goes, those who don't know can't be blamed. Next time, this prince will remember to inform your residents first. Next time? You still want there to be a next time? Is this your Jin Xin Wang Fu? You can come and go as you please? Old Madame Sun intentionally or unintentionally blocked her daughter-in-law. At that time, we will definitely welcome Wang Ye. Just don't know what Wang Ye has graced us with your presence today? Do you still need Ben Wang to say this question? Then, asking Wang Ye to move to the antechamber. Chun Fu will let my granddaughter dress up before going to see Wang Ye, so as not to be disrespectful in front of Wang Ye. You're going to marry Ben Wang. What kind of appearance can't you see? Now is just a meeting in advance. Besides, the servants of your Fu have unanimously pointed out the way for Ben Wang. Ben Wang personally thought that you didn't intend to stop Ben Wang. Anyone who had some respect for their future wife probably wouldn't say such rude words. Hearing this, how could she not know what he meant? Duchess Ding's eyes swept over the servants around as if they were poisoned. Regardless of whether others think it's not worth it, and regardless of whether others say he's stupid, as long as he thinks it's worth it, it's enough. After all, he's a man. It's only his reputation that will be damaged, and it won't ruin his future. On the contrary, the emperor may see that he was bullied by Jin Xin Wang and feel guilty, and think more highly of him. Old Madame Sun said coldly, "Nyang, how can you say that?" At this time, mother-in-law still spoke sarcastically. Wasn't that her most beloved grandson? Duchess Ding was anxious and angry, her eyes red. With the reputation of being a pet molester, how can Yilin marry and have children? Even if his future is not damaged, others will say that he's relying on sex, to get to the top. There are many people who want to cling to Duke Ding's Fu. Why can't he marry and have children? If his future is not damaged and there are benefits, isn't that enough? Don't you put benefits first? For benefits, you can sell your sons and daughters. The current situation may be to our Duke's satisfaction, especially your eldest son. He may be so happy that he's about to celebrate. And you? Ask yourself honestly, are you protecting Sister Jia or yourself? Nyang, it's not like this. It seemed that some secret had been exposed. Duchess Ding was angry and wanted to explain. If it weren't for your greed, would it have become like this today? If it's really for Sister Jia Er's sake, as long as you give enough sincerity, I believe that the emperor will take back the order. Even if you yourself take out the thing at the bottom of the chest, this marriage can also be dissolved. But you never thought that way. Duchess Ding looked at old Madame Sun in disbelief. Nyang, how do you know that? Duchess Ding sneered. How would this old woman know about that thing? If you don't do anything, don't stop Brother Lin from doing something for his sister. After that, she turned around and left without the help of the maid. Obviously, she was not interested in answering Duchess Ding's question. Sun Yilan's courtyard was very large, and there were all kinds of precious flowers and trees in sight. However, because they were placed and taken care of properly, there were not too many good things put together. Instead, it felt cumbersome. On the contrary, there was a dazzling scenery at every step. Li Hongyuan casually plucked a flower. The tiny thorns on the branch pricked his finger. He casually threw the flower away. Raising his hand, a dark red bead of blood appeared on his fingertip. With a swipe of his thumb, the blood bead was wiped away. Sun Yilan stood to the side in silence. Li Hongyuan walked and picked flowers as he walked. He did the same thing as before in the imperial palace, destroying flowers ruthlessly. After walking around, Li Hongyuan did not see the 4 famous peonies collected by Sun Yilan. Then, he saw the greenhouse in the courtyard. Chapter 89. Sister Jia, why don't we leave first? Jingwan felt that if she continued to watch, she would feel awkward. Sunny Jia was also very tangled. Although she had not experienced the baptism of adult education, she did not think as much as Jingwan and did not misunderstand the relationship between the two. However, the two of them did not seem to get along as badly as she imagined. Her worries seemed to be superfluous, but for her to turn around and leave like this, she was also not at ease. Jingwan's voice brought Sun Yilan back to his senses. Why did you come over? Sunny Jia naturally would not tell him directly that it was because she heard that her own brother had obstructed Jin Qinhuang for her, and he himself was put in a difficult position. For a moment, he accidentally smashed something. His heart was perturbed, and he could not sit still. It was Jingwan who suggested coming over to take a look. She was originally worried that it would be rude to leave Sister Wan behind, but she did not think that Sister Wan would also come over. In fact, Sunny Jia did not approve of Jingwan following along. She was worried that because she was not liked by Jin Qinhuang would vent his anger on Jingwan and do something rude to her. If it was not good, it might even ruin her reputation. However, Jingwan insisted, so she could not do anything. If it was said that Jingwan did not consider this, naturally it was not. When facing people who were not stingy, one naturally had to be on guard. After all, in this world, if a woman was too harsh, the consequences of ruining her reputation would be too serious, especially when it was related to innocence. Jingwan dared to come over. Naturally, she had something to rely on. After all, she was Jin Qinhuang's savior. She would not force him to repay the favor. For Jin Qinhuang to let her off was already a great kindness. However, the real reason was that she felt that Jin Qinhuang was not as unbearable as the rumors said. In addition to what she saw and understood about Jin Qinhuang, there was also a feeling. That feeling was inexplicably strong, so strong that it made her desperate to take risks. Because when I was at Bai Long Temple, I made a flower arrangement. Sister Jia said that the flowers in young Master Sun's courtyard were the best and wanted to cut a few to make vases. Jingwan lied without changing her expression. Because it was not completely false, she was not guilty at all. It was just that she was originally going to pick flowers in the garden. So it was like that. What do you need? I can cut it for you. If you just let them go like this, perhaps this misunderstanding would become real. It would be best to clarify it now. As for Jin Qinhuang, what the hell was that? Even if the emperor came up, he would have to stand aside. As for whether or not Jingwan would be fancied by a certain person, with his protection, he could not let her suffer losses. Jingwan had never felt that she would be bewitched by beauty, but at this time, there was also a tendency for her face to turn red and her heart to beat faster. She slightly lowered her head and restrained her gaze. It was no wonder that this man had such a bad reputation, yet there were still women throwing themselves at him. If they threw themselves at him, they would not have to sacrifice themselves for the rest of their lives. If they ate him and did not need to take responsibility, she also wanted to throw herself at him. She also wanted to nibble him clean from the inside out. Well, this was purely because she was bored. Seeing a super handsome man, she could not help but fantasize. Because Jingwan had shifted her gaze away, she did not see Li Hongyuan's faintly discernible smile. He had always known the charm of this face of his, but he did not pay much attention to it before. It was just that he did not expect that it would have some effect on Wan. Could it be that he finally found a use for this face? Because the time that the two people exchanged amorous glances was extremely short, Sun Yilin and Sun Yijia did not notice it. They did not know if it was an illusion or not, but Jin Wang Ye's mood seemed to be very good. Seeing that Li Hongyuan was about to use the scissors to destroy the flowers, Sun Yilin did not want to let his treasures be ruined. So, Miss Luo, what flowers do you need? Then he turned his head to look at Li Hongyuan. That bit of gentleness was completely restrained. For Wang Ye to condescend, it is also the fortune of these flowers. However, Sun Yilin did not count on him. In his view, in the end, he would still have to do it himself. He only hoped that his flowers would not be ruined by him. In fact, there is no need to deliberately cut a particular kind of flower. A single kind of flower has a single kind of insertion method, and many kinds of flowers have many kinds of insertion methods. There is no unified conclusion. Li Hongyuan nodded slightly. His eyes swept over the flowers, and then he started. In his previous life, he only knew that Wan raised flowers, loved and cherished flowers. But when he met her, she already did not have the time, did not have the conditions, and did not have the heart to take care of those flowers and plants. It was only by chance that he saw her make a flower basket out of wildflowers. It was clearly the most unremarkable thing, but in her hands, it was able to show the effect of attracting the attention of the world. At that time, from her body, he saw longing, a tenderness that had disappeared for a long time, and a trace of the most pure smile. Originally, he thought that Li Hongyuan was an expert in ruining flowers, but after he cut a few times, not only Sun Yilin, even Jingwan revealed a surprised expression. This Wang Ye's understanding of all kinds of flowers and plants seemed to be beyond their expectations. She was originally worried that if Miss Luo was really a demoness who could bring disaster to the country, then when the Qi Yuan dynasty changed to a new emperor, it would be the end of the country. Fortunately, her new master was much better than she had expected, so it did not take long for her to completely lean towards her young lady. Moreover, after more than 2 years, she was very clear that if Miss Luo was really raised to such a high position by the prince, she had the ability to protect the country. It was not only because she could influence the prince to the greatest extent, but also because she herself had that kind of potential. While Gong Mama was distracted, Li Hongyuan came back with a basket full of flowers. His movements were calm and unhurried, and his posture was straight. Even though he was doing something that did not match his status, it did not damage his noble aura at all. Instead, it reduced the coldness and alienation that came from his princely robes, making him seem so high and mighty that he could be easily broken with a stretch of his hand, tempting people to approach him. Wherever this man went, the heavens and the earth would dim in comparison. Jingwan almost subconsciously stroked the prayer beads on her wrist. The feeling of a monarch overlooking the world appeared again. Every step he took, it was as if he deliberately stepped on her heart. And this time, not only Jingwan, Sun Yilin, who was close by, also felt it. Because he often saw Lu Chengdi, he was very clear about what it meant to be unpredictable. If it was a guess before, then now, Sun Yilin was 100% sure that all of them had been deceived by Jin Qinhuang. He hid it so deeply. If he said that he did not have any ulterior motives, even Ghost would not believe it. However, he had clearly been hiding it well. So why did he suddenly find out? Perhaps he agreed to this marriage because he wanted to win over Duke Dingwafu, or was it because he wanted to be used by Li Hongyuan? He originally did not approve of this marriage, and after Li Hongyuan was exposed, he disapproved even more. Not to mention whether his terrible reputation before was true or false. Even if it was false, this man's mind was too deep, too terrifying. It was not something that could be influenced by anyone. And in Sun Yilin's view, those were most likely true, because it had no effect on him at all. So, why should he wrong himself? Moreover, only by making the play real could he deceive everyone. Therefore, no matter what, if his younger sister married him, she would definitely not have a good life. Seeing Sun Yilin's fluctuating expression, he could roughly guess what he was thinking. Li Hongyuan coldly snorted in his heart. He did not need Duke Dingwafu at all. What he needed was the Sun clan behind it. Not to win them over, but to destroy them, to split them up. Moreover, it was really embarrassing, but he had already started. Without needing Sun Yilan's orders, they all moved to a small pavilion in the courtyard. Older sister Jia, let's go. It seemed that there was nothing wrong and the excuse had been achieved. There was no need to continue staying here. Younger sister Wan, there's no rush. Didn't I say before that I wanted to learn how to cultivate flowers from fifth brother? He's not a qualified teacher. How about you tell me again now? You don't have to tell me too much. Just tell me about the habits of the flowers in fifth brother's courtyard. Sunny Jia held Jingwan's hand. Jingwan saw that her line of sight always seemed to glance at Li Hongyuan and Sun Yilan. How could she not understand her intentions? Jingwan readily agreed. From the moment they entered, Jingwan discovered that there were many varieties of flowers and trees in Sun Yilan's courtyard. Moreover, it could be seen that they were all carefully cultivated and taken care of very carefully. Even if Sun Ijia's purpose was not here, Jingwan was not perfunctory. No matter what kind of flowers or trees she introduced, she was very careful and attentive. She used words that Sun Ijia could understand as much as possible. It was concise and comprehensive. Even if Sun Ijia was distracted at the beginning, she was gradually attracted over. From time to time, she would ask one or two questions. Jingwan told her everything that she knew. Moreover, these questions were not difficult for her at all. In the pavilion over there, the moment Sun Yilan saw the truth, he knew that his skills were not enough in Jin Qinhuang's eyes. What is Wang Ye's intention? Li Hongyuan held the cup and took a small sip. He carefully tasted the taste. It's not bad. He raised his head and drained it in one gulp. Wang Ye is quite assured of this official. Are you not worried that this official will tamper with the wine? Li Hongyuan faintly glanced at him. Are you that stupid? In the past, I naturally would not. But now it's different. Wang Ye's threat is too big. Paying a little price to get rid of future troubles. Why not? Pay a little price? Sun Yilan, in your opinion, how big is this price? Then Bin Wang will tell you. Dingwa Gong Fu, Sun Clan, the Empress, Li Hongyi, and all the officials who support him. 9 generations will be exterminated. Li Hongyuan smiled and downplayed the bloody matter. Sun Yilan's face was cold as he stared fixedly at Li Hongyuan. https://11/11/6652972. Sun Yilan couldn't help but stiffen. As if he had whetted Sun Yilan's appetite enough, Li Hongyuan finally showed great mercy and opened his mouth. Bin Wang doesn't need you to do anything. You can do whatever you think you should do. As for the reason why I let you know these things, it's better that you don't know. If you know, in case you do something irrational, your Highness might be unhappy and end your life. No matter what, you're still considered a talent. If you die before you can benefit the common people, it's more or less a pity. A male peacock letting another male peacock teach him how to be strong and beautiful. If it wasn't courtship, then wasn't it obvious what it was for? A maidservant came and respectfully saluted. Your Highness, Gongzi, Prince Kong has arrived. Li Hongyuan picked up the wine on the table and drained it in one gulp, then casually threw the cup back on the table. Li Hongyi is worried that your Highness will eat you up. He came quite quickly. It seems that he really values you. You're appreciated by Fu Huang, and you're also brimming with talent. You're the minister he reserved for his future backbone. If you're ruined by Bin Wang, he would indeed feel distressed. However, since he dares to go against Bin Wang, I don't know if he's prepared to pay the price. Why is he going against you? It's clearly you who started it first. Knowing that Prince Kong was coming, Sun Ijia was naturally relieved. Although she felt that if Prince Jin really wanted to do something, even Prince Kong wouldn't be able to stop him. But now, Prince Jin would restrain himself and wouldn't do anything too excessive. Thus, she pulled Jingwan and left with the basket of flowers. His wife couldn't see. Li Hongyuan couldn't help but sigh with regret in his heart. Already faintly seeing the figures of Prince Kang's party, Li Hongyuan suddenly made a move. With one hand, he took off Sun Yilan's crown, and with the other, he tore open his clothes. Probably because they didn't expect that Li Hongyuan would suddenly make such a move. The servants at the side were so shocked that their mouths were wide open, and Sun Yilan was also somewhat stupefied for a moment. But when he saw Li Hongyuan casually throw away the crown, his fingers seemingly brushing past his collar, And then there was Prince Kang's furious roar. Li Hongyuan. Sun Yilin instantly returned to his senses, watching as Li Hongyuan indifferently withdrew his hand and sat back with a calm expression. With one hand propped up on the table, the other hand gently smashed the cup. His appearance was lazy, but his eyes were particularly gloomy and cold, as if he was really unhappy because he was disturbed. He was also really unhappy, but the reason for this was unknown. Sun Yilin could be considered to have seen with his own eyes this man's temperamental temperament, as well as the viciousness in his bones. Expressionlessly straightening his clothes, he glanced at the broken crown on the ground and stood up. Then, just as he turned around, he bumped into Prince Kang face to face. He saw that Sun Yilin's clothes were disheveled. His fine black hair was loose, his face was cold, and his eyes were indifferent. There was no trace of the usual gentle and graceful young master's appearance. Greetings to Prince Kang. This official has been disrespectful. Please allow this official to tidy up. How could Prince Kang say anything else? He hurriedly waved his hand to let him leave. When Sun Yilin entered the room, Prince Kang's anger completely exploded. Li Hongyuan, what do you want to do? Those lowly commoners can't satisfy you. So you extend your hands to Yilin? You're willing to degrade yourself? Don't cherish your reputation, and go against morality and morality. It's fine, but you still want to stain Yilin with dirty water? Do you think that you can do whatever you want just because you have Imperial Father's support? This prince is telling you, if you dare to touch a single finger of Yilin, this prince will definitely not let this matter rest even if Imperial Father severely punishes you. Prince Kang, your voice was so loud that even the people outside the courtyard heard it clearly. Inside the room, Sun Yilin's face darkened. He really wanted to grab Prince Kang's collar and shake him hard. Pig brain. Originally, only a few people knew about it. Did he want everyone to know about it? Originally, there was nothing, so this nothing would become something. He was afraid that it wouldn't be long before the capital would be flooded with all kinds of erotic poems, songs, and stories, all about splitting peaches and being gay. Although they wouldn't name names, but his and Jin Qinhuang's status was there. Anyone who saw it would involuntarily associate it with them. And some people who walked outside the courtyard simply couldn't wait to clap their hands and cheer. This old sixth was infuriating, but the things he did were absolutely satisfying. And there was also a certain idiot. Continue to shout, continue to scold even more harshly. It would be best if you completely enrage old sixth. Li Hongyuan raised his head to look at this Li Hongyi. He didn't say anything and didn't move. That gloomy gaze made Li Hongyi somewhat fearful. What? Did Bin Wang say something wrong? Li Hongyi resisted the urge to retreat. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. Bin Wang just feels that eldest imperial brother's temper is so big. It doesn't seem like you're protecting your own younger cousin, but more like Bin Wang is stealing your person. Li Hongyuan, don't talk nonsense. Prince Kang clenched his fists, his face flushed red with anger. Even if Bin Wang poked at your thoughts, there's no need to get angry out of humiliation. Why didn't you say so earlier? If Bin Wang knew earlier, Bin Wang definitely wouldn't have made a move against Sun Yilin. For this kind of matter, even if you don't trust others, you should trust Bin Wang. Bin Wang is leading by example, not like those pedantic old fogies. How could Bin Wang expose the matter and forcefully break you two apart? Li Hongyuan said and sighed with infinite melancholy. After tidying up, he resumed his gentle as jade appearance. However, when he heard Li Hongyuan's words, his face cracked a little. As for the people who came in from the outside, Li Hongyuan mostly had an air of hostility and looked at people with his nostrils. If there was no need, he would never open his mouth. But sometimes, when he opened his mouth, he could turn red into white and white into black, infuriating people to death. Although they knew that he was talking nonsense, there were still people who couldn't help but sweep their eyes back and forth between Li Hongyi and Sun Yilin. Thinking about all the things that happened in the past, Jin Wang's words didn't seem to be completely fabricated. When Kang Wang heard those not-so-subtle mutterings, he only felt his head swell. When he thought about the humiliation and depression of the past, his eyes gradually became bloodshot and faintly red. He forgot the Empress's warning not long ago and, like an angry beast, he raised his fist and pounced at Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan dangerously narrowed his eyes. In this life, he didn't learn anything else because it was all things that were memorized in his mind. But martial arts were different. If he didn't advance, he would fall back. If he didn't practice, he would become a cripple. Therefore, in terms of martial arts, he was already the most powerful among the brothers. What's more, he also had rich experience in fighting enemies. It could be said that if he wanted to kill Li Hongyi, it would be an easy matter. With a sidestep, he avoided Li Hongyi's attack, but Li Hongyi directly fell down because he missed. Li Hongyuan took advantage of the situation to get up and unceremoniously stepped on Li Hongyi's back. With a ruthless expression, he crushed it. Not surprisingly, he heard Li Hongyi's painful groan. Everything happened too quickly. By the time Li Hongyi's guards recovered and rushed into the pavilion, Li Hongyuan had already retracted his foot and stood with his hands clasped behind his back. Looking at the guards who were about to pull out their swords, he sneered. If you have the courage to pull out your swords, why are your hands shaking? Today, Ben Wang will teach you well. With lightning speed, he pulled out his swords, moved back, and stabbed forward. That guard who had his sword stolen was pierced by his own sword. Blood flowed out, his eyes widened, and his pupils contracted. Li Hongyuan let go, and he fell to the ground. Coincidentally, a part of his body pressed on Li Hongyi's body, causing him to be covered in blood. In addition, the guards hurriedly retreated. Even if they were terrified, they forced themselves to suppress the urge to pull out their swords to defend themselves. If they dared to do so, not to mention whether they could beat Jin Qinhuang or not, even if they didn't die on the spot, they would undoubtedly die afterwards. Not only that, they would also implicate their families. Not to mention that Li Hongyi was frightened. Even the people who were watching the excitement were shocked by Li Hongyuan's ruthlessness. Without any warning, he took a life? Who among them hadn't had their hands stained with blood and human lives? But basically, it was through other people's hands. Basically, no one would personally do it. Eldest imperial brother, look at this group of wastes that you raised. Ben Wang helped you take care of one. Remember to send a thank you gift to Jin Qinhuang Fu. After all, not everyone has the honor of making Ben Wang personally take care of them. Not to mention that killing people takes a lot of effort. It also dirties Ben Wang's hands. Li Hongyuan looked at the bloodstains on his hands with a face full of disgust. The words that came out of his mouth were really not the usual shameless. And Mu Gonggong, who originally no one noticed, came out in time to make his presence known. He trotted into the pavilion and put a snow-white silk handkerchief in Li Hongyuan's hand. Then he stood to the side with lowered eyebrows. Originally, he returned to Jin Qinhuang Fu with the Qinhuang honor. After learning that Li Hongyuan came to Dinghua Fu, he rushed over with the carriage. When he heard that his master had Sun Yilin accompany him to drink, he could only secretly sigh. Sure enough, if he didn't cause some trouble, he wouldn't be their family's wise and powerful Jin Qinhuang. Then he saw Kang Qinhuang, who hurriedly entered Dinghua Fu, and then Rui Qinhuang, Gong Qinhuang, and the others who came to watch the excitement, so he followed in. Li Hongyuan wiped very carefully, but after all, it was just wiping, so naturally it wasn't too clean. Then, Sun Yilin also entered the pavilion with a maidservant carrying water. Seeing the maidservant's shivering appearance, the water in the basin rippled. Sun Yilin personally took it. Wang Ya, please wash your hands. Li Hongyuan saw that his face was a little green, but he still held the basin steadily. The current Sun Yilin hadn't seen this kind of scene. Li Hongyuan looked at him with a smile that wasn't a smile, slowly soaking his hands in the water to wash. Compared to eldest imperial brother, Yilin really admires Ben Wang more, right? Wang Ye is joking. He put down the basin and picked up the handkerchief. Do you need this official to help Wang Ye wipe his hands? TSK. He counterattacked so quickly. Did he find out that he resisted physical contact with him, so he deliberately wanted to disgust him? He didn't respond to his words, nor did he take the handkerchief. Feeling Jingwan's resistance and struggle, Li Hongyuan's arms tightened. Wan, you still want to leave me? You still want to leave me? I'm telling you, I won't allow it. I definitely won't allow it. There was a strong possessiveness and an unspeakable fear in his voice. Jingwan thought of the night he was injured. He was also like this in a daze. She knew that it was not wise to go against him at this time, so she obediently waited for a while. After hesitating for a while, she reached out to pat his back. "Your Highness, calm down. This subject's daughter is not. Don't talk. Let me hold you for a while." Every time Li Hongyuan thought of his past life, Jingwan's tragic death, he would go crazy. Now that Jingwan was here, he quickly regained his senses. It was not like before, when the people by his side always had to suffer. However, she was already in his arms. Even if a certain person came back to his senses, he would not let go so easily. This was her boss. Jingwan knew that she could not afford to offend him. If things got out of hand, she would be the one to suffer, so she obediently let him hold her. But when she thought of how this was older sister Jia's fiancé, even if they hated each other, she could not help but feel guilty for betraying her best friend. She silently apologized to Sun Yijia in her heart. A while was fine, but wasn't this a little too long? "Your Highness." Jingwan pushed him, her intention obvious. Even if he was reluctant, in front of Jingwan, he easily compromised and let go. Jingwan quickly backed away, causing Li Hongyuan's eyes to darken a bit, but this time he did not move. "Have a seat." Li Hongyuan pointed at the soft cushion on the side. The soft cushion was comfortable and soft to the touch, and the surface was made of the best fur. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. As expected of a member of the imperial family, ordinary people would not be able to see it, and even if an official's family had it, they would definitely cherish it very much. With the skillful hands of the embroiderers, not a single bit of it would be left behind on the clothes. But this one was good, sewing a large piece of it into a cushion. He casually looked at the things placed inside, and any one of them was of good quality. It was completely different from the shabby things seen outside. Li Hongyuan saw Jingwan's actions and expressions. He was purely curious and sighing, without the slightest bit of envy, let alone greed. Even if he was sizing her up, he was magnanimous, not sneaky at all. In the blink of an eye, that bit of curiosity disappeared, and he sat down quietly. Just now, it was this prince who was rude to Mississippi. Li Hongyuan opened his mouth. Outside, an who was driving the carriage, had a straight face. Because he was also the head of the imperial bodyguards, when he appeared with his two identities, it was naturally different. Even if someone saw him now, they would not associate him with Li Hongyuan's imperial bodyguard. Hearing this, he couldn't help but curse in his heart. Master, this shameless person, actually pretended to be a modest gentleman. Big-tailed wolf, so be it. You can pretend for a while, but you can pretend for a lifetime. In the future, when Miss Luo finds out, you're not afraid of being punished. No, your Highness doesn't need to take it to heart. It had to be said that his attitude really surprised Jingwan. Whether it was what she heard or the few times she met him, it was poles apart from the current situation. Li Hongyuan seemed to be able to see through her thoughts at a glance. He chuckled. "After all, you are this prince's savior." Jingwan was startled, not only because of Li Hongyuan's words, but also because of that smile. It was simply a blooming peony. Although it might be an ink peony, it was also the most luxurious, the most rare, and the one that was unbelievably beautiful. Li Hongyuan relaxed his body and calmly leaned back. His expression was languid, but there was also a bit of charm. Jingwan's lips and teeth slightly opened, spitting out two words, "evildoer." Li Hongyuan didn't hear what she said clearly, but from the shape of her lips, he could more or less guess it. What did Miss Luo say? Nothing. I don't know what instructions your Highness has for this subject. Li Hongyuan's line of sight fell on Jingwan's neck. How is Miss Luo's injury? Jingwan subconsciously reached out to cover her neck, but seeing Li Hongyuan's calm and upright expression, as if he really was just concerned about her and didn't have any other meaning, Jingwan felt that she overreacted. Her face reddened and she put down her hand. "Thanking your Highness for your concern. It's almost healed. What does Miss Luo want?" Li Hongyuan acted as if he didn't notice her movements and spoke softly. Jingwan hesitated for a moment. "This subject thinks, your Highness's bodyguard should have passed on this subject's words to your Highness." Li Hongyuan waved his hand. "That's nothing. Although this prince is a bit of a bastard, it's not to the point of forcing people to do things against their will. Moreover, this isn't as simple as saving your life. Jingwan understood the meaning behind Li Hongyuan's words. If she didn't ask for something, perhaps Jin Xinwang wouldn't be at ease. She had caught his handle, so how could she let him have some handle on her? Jingwan was silent for a moment before she slowly opened her mouth. Can your highness and Jia Jejia dissolve the engagement? Li Hongyuan probably didn't think that she would make such a request. Miss Luo's concern for her good friend is truly meticulous. Jingwan could hear that his tone had become a bit colder and knew that her request was very inappropriate. As the saying goes, it's better to tear down a temple than to destroy a marriage. Moreover, by making such a request, wasn't it clearly telling him that he wasn't a good person? Even as an outsider, she would rather damage her good friend's reputation and wanted to interfere with this marriage. Looking down on him like this, even if it was an ordinary man, he would be angry, not to mention that he was of noble descent. These words could be compared to offending one's superior. Jingwan hurriedly got up and apologized. This subject's daughter is rude. Please forgive me, your highness. To be disdained by the person at the top of one's heart, it was impossible to say that one didn't feel anything. What's more, she was so attentive to other people, yet she was so distant with him that she could even be considered a stranger. He was very unwilling. But when he saw Jingwan frowning with an uneasy expression, he also felt distressed. Forget it. He could always make it up to her in the future. Get up, your highness. Ben Wang didn't mean to blame you. Your request, your highness, Ben Wang agrees. Your highness. Jingwan raised her head to look at him, somewhat in disbelief. Li Hongyuan laughed in spite of himself. Is it possible that Ben Wang's life is not worth a marriage that no one is willing to accept? Many thanks to your highness, but I'm afraid that this matter will make your highness feel awkward. It's not awkward, it's just being a scoundrel again. Ben Wang has done a lot of scoundrels, so this one won't make a difference. Li Hongyuan said rather self-deprecatingly. Jingwan's lips quivered, feeling rather guilty. Li Hongyuan, this big-tailed wolf, was wagging his tail in his heart. This was originally part of his plan, but now that he had an unexpected harvest, it could be considered a small compensation for him. But there is one thing that I need to remind Miss Luo. This prince has a reputation of bringing bad luck to his wife. None of the women that have been engaged to this prince have a good ending. I'm afraid that before this prince can resolve this matter, something will happen to your good sister. Jingwan gave an indifferent smile. That's pure nonsense. This subject doesn't believe in such things. Even if something like this really happened, it's probably because I haven't met the destined person. That's right. You haven't met the destined person. In your previous life, you didn't meet the destined person, so your ending was tragic. This prince didn't meet the destined person, so I was deceived and betrayed. The two of us should be together. Sit down. Your highness, if there's nothing else, this subject will take her leave first. After all, Miss Luo, are you planning to throw me away after using me? You're not even willing to sit with this prince for a while longer? Jingwan was speechless. What did he mean by throwing me away after using me? His words made her speechless, as if she had nothing to say. But since he had said so, Jingwan could only sit back down. For a moment, the carriage fell into silence. Jingwan looked down, and Li Hongyuan kept looking at her. With such an unabashed gaze, it was difficult for Jingwan to pretend that she didn't know. Finally, she couldn't help but look at Li Hongyuan. Is this subject and that girl that similar? And? Li Hongyuan was somewhat baffled by her question, and for a moment, he didn't respond. Jingwan's imagined result was that this Jin prince originally had a true love, but she didn't know why she left him. Perhaps because of this, he became greedy for flowers and beauties. She originally thought that he was muddle-headed from his fever that night, so he held on to the person in front of him. But looking at him just now, he was clearly sober and did the same thing. Then it could only mean that there were similarities between her and that girl, and she was afraid that it was quite a lot. Although saying it might expose his scars and even anger him, it was very uncomfortable to be stared at from the back. Therefore, Jingwan was bold for once. Seeing that he didn't understand, she deliberated for a moment. It's that Wan girl that you spoke of. How could Li Hongyuan not understand? She thought that he treated her as someone else. His face immediately darkened. He did so much, and this was the result? He really wanted to directly pull her over, strip her clothes, and then tell her who the person he called was. Jingwan felt that she might have lit a barrel of explosives. Jean Prince seemed to want to strangle her. Jingwan was vexed. How could she be muddle-headed and dare to stroke the tiger's whiskers? Was it because the man in front of her was too peaceful? Or was she relying on her resemblance to his sweetheart, relying on the fact that she was his savior? In fact, Jingwan herself didn't realize that she had always been a cautious person, but on Li Hongyuan's matters, she was bold more than once. Wang Ye, calm your anger. Who told you that? Li Hongyuan said through gritted teeth. Is it not? Jingwan weakly asked. Li Hongyuan was choked by her. It had always been him choking others. Was Jingwan here specifically to subdue him? In fact, Jingwan couldn't be blamed for thinking this way. There was no way to explain this matter. Shut up for Bin Wang. Jingwan obediently did as she was told. After all, this living king of hell only told her to shut up and didn't directly strangle her to death. This was already very benevolent. Li Hongyuan frowned and fiercely closed his eyes, covering his eyes. Jingwan didn't expect that this insufferably arrogant man would be in so much pain. Sure enough, no matter how ruthless and dark a person was, there would always be a soft side to his heart. After Li Hongyuan moved his hand away, he had already recovered his calm. He only faintly looked at Jingwan. Jingwan pursed her lips. This subject's daughter is very sorry. Sorry is enough? Since Miss Luo feels this way, why don't you compensate Bin Wang with yourself? Li Hongyuan coldly said. Wang Ye, please have some self-respect. Although Jingwan felt guilty about what happened just now, it didn't mean that she would obediently be humiliated. TSK, she was still so amenable to coaxing but not coercion. In her previous life, this kind of personality was more or less a factor in her suffering. Under the imperial power, it could be said that without power, there was no right to be arrogant. It was even more likely that one's pride would be broken. In reality, if Wanwan chose herself and abandoned her husband's family, she could at least live. But she was unyielding and unyielding. Her husband's family didn't betray her, so she didn't abandon them and chose the most difficult and tragic path. There is no such thing as self-respect for Bin Wang. What do you want? Jingwan frowned and coldly looked at him. Wang Ye's position is high and powerful. In your eyes, this subject's daughter is naturally nothing. The Luo family. The two words Li Hongyuan made Jingwan shut her mouth. In fact, her weakness was very obvious and easy to catch. People like them would definitely be able to catch her easily. Wang Ye doesn't need to use the Luo family to threaten this subject's daughter. This subject's daughter should bear the consequences of her own actions. Rather die as a piece of jade than as an intact tile, banishing yourself from the Luo family? Surprise flashed through Jingwan's eyes. This man is really terrifying, seeing through everything. Sure enough, when faced with a threat to the Luo family, she would still make the same choice. Li Hongyuan laughed. Bin Wang is not someone who will not be implicated just because he has distanced himself from the relationship. Enough, Bin Wang is not such a petty person. I won't go as far as to exterminate an entire family over such a small matter. Seeing that Jingwan was still frowning, he was slightly displeased. Girls should dress up beautifully and live their own days without worries. Don't think about this and that all day long. If you worry too much, be careful that you will age quickly. Your future husband will be distressed. Jingwan raised her eyebrows again. Was this really what Jin Qinhuang said? And the speed at which he changed his face. Just treat it as if Bin Wang treats you as her. However, you can rest assured that Bin Wang will not do anything to you. This was not an excuse to be good to her. As for this misunderstanding, since it had already been created, he would slowly think of a way to eliminate it after marriage. In any case, at that time, the person would already be in his mouth. There would be time to grind with her, time to let her see the truth clearly. You can go back early. Jingwan only felt that Jin Qinhuang's attitude was a bit strange. It was really like what he said, treating her as her. But she felt that it was not the case. However, being alone with a man for so long was indeed very inappropriate. Since she was allowed to leave, Jingwan also did not stay for long. Chenu will retire. An very perceptively lifted the curtain from the outside and put a stool next to the carriage. He respectfully asked Jingwan to get off the carriage. After getting off the carriage, Jingwan looked back at Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan sat upright and nodded at her with a faint smile. His eyes were faintly gentle, but it did not seem like he was looking at others through her. Seeing that their family's young lady had finally come down, Gong Mama and the servant girls hurriedly went up to greet her. The servant girls' faces were full of anxiety. Seeing that Jingwan's complexion was not very good, they thought that something had happened. Gong Mama slightly frowned. Because the two carriages were far apart, she could only faintly hear some things and could not connect all the things together. "Young lady, it's nothing, go back." Jingwan waved her hand. Seeing that she did not want to say more, Gong Mama also did not ask anything. She just looked at Li Hongyuan in the carriage from a distance. A long time after Luo family's carriage left, Li Hongyuan was still sitting there, not saying a word. He did not speak, so an E could not do anything, just like a shadow. In fact, when an E heard Jingwan's words, he slightly sympathized with his master. "An E, are you thinking that this is the retribution for Bin Wang's usual evil deeds?" An E was shocked into a cold sweat. This feeling of being seen through in an instant was really terrifying. This subordinate does not dare return to the Fu. Yes. Returning to Jin Qinwang Fu, Mu Gonggong told him two things. First, Chun family's third branch had arrived in the capital. Second, Kong Qinwang had entered the palace. Wan, you're going to get engaged? Although this was a planned matter, his heart was still very unhappy. Chapter 92. When Jingwan returned to the Luo family, she had already regained her calm. She didn't know what Jin Qinwang wanted to do, but she could only do what she should do. If something happened, then she would deal with it accordingly. If she couldn't deal with it, then perhaps she should just wait for someone to deal with it. Jingwan didn't take the initiative to talk about it, so Gong Mama also didn't ask. Even if Jingwan treated her as an elder, after all, there was a difference between master and servant. In addition, Jingwan herself had her own opinions. Even if she was worried, she would strictly abide by her duties and wouldn't ask about everything. She just repeatedly instructed the two servant girls accompanying her to keep their mouths shut and not mention a single word to anyone. The two servant girls also knew that this matter was related to their family's young lady's reputation, so they repeatedly promised Gong Mama. As for the coachman, Gong Mama just said a few words. Regarding this person, Gong Mama wasn't worried at all, because he was the living king of Hell's people. The arrival of the Chen family's third branch in the capital also meant that the marriage between Jingwan and Chen Jingmin was officially put on the table. When the Chen family came to the Luo family, after Chen Jingmin's elders saw Jingwan, there was no one who was dissatisfied. Such a young lady was simply outside of their expectations. Chen Jingmin's mother took off a bracelet on the spot and put it on Jingwan's hand. After that, the entire Luo family basically knew about this marriage. Perhaps it was because Luo Jingying had gotten a definite answer from her father. Her father had listened to her suggestion and she would get what she wanted, so she was in a good mood. That was why she smiled at everyone she met. It was the kind of smile that came from the bottom of her heart. She did not act one way in front of others or behind their backs. With the help of Luo Romping's money, Luo Jingying looked brand new. In the past, she didn't like delicate and beautiful clothes and jewelry, but now she was very fond of them. Those things that she loved in the past, in a flash, were discarded by her like worn-out shoes. It was so natural that one couldn't see any reluctance. It must be said that some of her strength was really not ordinary. Luo Jingying took the servant girls to the begonia house. "Mimi congratulates third Jiejie here." Jingwan glanced at her from head to toe. Unlike Luo Jingying's expectation, she chuckled and said, "Congratulations to you too." Luo Jingying was startled and a little flustered. Could it be that their third branch's plan had been found out? But thinking about it, it was simply impossible. Third elder sister really knows how to joke? Little sister doesn't have any good news. The third branch is harmonious. Third uncle treats fourth sister even better than before. Third aunt is also more virtuous and generous. Fourth sister is going to have a younger brother or sister. Isn't that a good thing? Jingwan said with some doubt. Even though Luo Jingying was in a good mood, her face cracked a little. She knew better than anyone the reason why the third branch could have a temporary peace. They were clearly poking her where it hurt. Luo Jingying was so vicious. She originally wanted to wait until she had a bright future and ask Prince Rue to support her third elder sister's husband's family. But it seemed that it was completely unnecessary. If she couldn't grasp the opportunity given to her, what else could she do? As for that slut, now that her father was protecting her, she could be arrogant for a while. When she and Prince Rue's matter was settled, she would slowly deal with her and the bastard child in her belly. Third elder sister is right. It is indeed a good thing. Jingwan smiled and nodded. Luo Jingying came happily and left angrily. She couldn't say anything now. Just wait and see. One day, Luo Jingwan will have to kneel and beg me. Fourth young lady is becoming more and more unruly. Qing Ju was outspoken. After Luo Jingying left, she couldn't help but twitch her mouth. Shut up. How is fourth young lady? It's not something you can talk about. The wet nurse patted Qing Ju. Qing Ju wrinkled her nose and didn't speak anymore. The others laughed and shook their heads. Because both sides had intentions, the rest of the matter was natural. The third branch of the Qin family had just arrived in the capital and naturally didn't have time to buy many things. However, the first branch had already prepared. They didn't think that the third branch would refuse this marriage. In fact, when Chen Jingmin learned of this matter, he was overjoyed. This was something he had never expected. He didn't dare to dream of a girl like the third cousin of the Luo family before. If he could get a good ranking after this imperial examination, it would be fine. But now, he was so happy that he was silly. Not Siley was well behaved. The geese he used were the commonly used wooden ones. Chen Jingmin wanted to get a live one, but unfortunately, he could only dream about it. Fortunately, whether it was the Luo family or Jingwan herself, they didn't care too much about this. It was enough for them to be polite. Then, it was time to exchange the marriage invitation. In just a few days, it was basically done smoothly. However, because Jingwan's coming-of-age hairpin ceremony had to wait until next year, whether it was Madame Luo, Luo Peishan, or even Jingwan's parents, they all hoped to keep Jingwan for 2 more years. Therefore, the wedding date was at least 2 years away. This gave Chen Zhengmin some time to make some achievements. At least, the elders of the Luo family would be more assured to hand Jingwan over to him. He also thought so. A girl like his cousin needed to be pampered. He couldn't have nothing. When all these things were settled, Madame Luo also breathed a sigh of relief. Before, she still felt uneasy. It seemed that she thought too much. She didn't know if it was intentional or not, but Jingwan's engagement was done very low-key. Of the 3 best sisters she met after entering the capital, only Yuan Xiaoqiao knew some news from her mother. After all, this kind of happy event, it was normal for relatives to know. The other 2 were completely unaware, especially Sun Yijia. Perhaps she faintly felt that Sun Yijia really wanted her to be her sister-in-law. These days, Jingwan even unilaterally cut off all contact with Sun Yijia. Fortunately, because of the trouble caused by Kang Qinwang, Jin Qinwang, and Sun Yilin, Ding Wagong Fu was once again in the midst of the wind and waves. Sun Yijia was getting married next month and had a lot of things to do. Jingwan hid it from her, so she couldn't go to the Luo family. The wedding date was still early. Embroidering the dowry and so on could be done slowly. Therefore, Jingwan went out. It was time to go see Yuan Xiaoqiao and Zhouing Shuang. As for Ding Wagong Fu, it was not convenient to go for the time being. The love triangle between the 3 men and how the court and the harem had become, Jingwan knew clearly from her grandfather, Luo Peishan. After Jingwan heard about it, there was only one word that could describe her feelings: embarrassed. In her opinion, this matter was most likely caused by Jin Qinwang. If he really didn't care about men and women, he most likely wouldn't reach out his hand to Sun Yilin. What could be done? What could be done that would be disadvantageous to him? There was no reason for that kind of person to not be clear. Playing around was one thing, but if it was for real, then it was completely different. However, Jingwan always felt that it might not be just because his bad temper flared up. Doing something for entertainment when he had nothing to do was probably just to cover up his true purpose. But she also didn't hear her grandfather mention anything else in the court that was worth paying attention to. If Jingwan knew that Li Hongyuan's purpose was just to tie down the feet of one love rival and let the other love rival smoothly get engaged with the girl at the bottom of his heart, what kind of expression would she have? Making such a big fuss, was it just to help the love rival? It should be said that Jin Xinwang really wasn't an ordinary person. His mind was treacherous, and he didn't act according to common sense. Even when she went to see the people who were recuperating, she didn't bring any medicinal herbs or the like. Those things, the Luo family had already sent a lot of them over. Jingwan only brought a few pots of flowers and plants, as well as the rouge and face powder that she had made these days. There were also some skincare products, all of which were made with pure natural ingredients, so there was no need to worry about being poisoned. Jingwan first went to the Yuan family. Yuan Xiaoqiao's father was the director of the Ministry of Appointments. A fourth-rank official in a local area may be a leader, but in a place like the capital, it really didn't count for much. However, the Ministry of Appointments was in charge of the appointment, dismissal, examination, promotion, transfer, and so on. Therefore, even if it was the lowest rank official in the Ministry of Appointments, there would still be a lot of people fighting over it. Didn't you see how when Jingwan and the others entered the capital, when eldest aunt came to visit, Lucier anxiously rushed forward to curry favor? Yuan Xiaoqiao's situation wasn't bad. Luo Peishan personally invited the imperial physicians from the imperial hospital, and with the medicine prescribed by Great Master Liaochen, her situation was much better than expected. Compared to before, her body might be a bit weaker, but it wasn't to the extent that she would become a pot of medicine that couldn't be exposed to the wind. As long as the broken leg was properly taken care of, there wouldn't be any hidden dangers. Wan, you finally came. I was almost bored to death in the room. As soon as she heard Yuan Xiaoqiao say the word die, her wet nurse hurriedly spat twice, telling her to stop talking nonsense. Yuan Xiaoqiao hurriedly responded and didn't say anything else. She turned around and stuck out her tongue at Jingwan. It seemed that because of this matter, she had been tormented in many ways. Jingwan saw that Yuan Xiaoqiao was so energetic that she was truly relieved. However, with Yuan Xiaoqiao's lively personality, she was afraid that she really was bored to death because she couldn't move her leg. Where's Aunt? Why don't I see her? Jingwan didn't see her from the moment she entered the Yuan family's gate. Yuan Xiaoqiao pursed her lips. I think you know about our family's situation. Isn't it because there's trouble over there? My mother is now serving her like an old maid, and my grandmother and the others are also complying with her in everything. I hope she can really give birth to a son, otherwise, she'll suffer afterwards. Yuan Xiaoqiao was so relaxed and didn't worry about her mother at all because she knew that her father and grandmother treated her mother very well. Although her grandmother was also worried that her mother couldn't give birth to a grandson for her, she still repeatedly comforted her mother that this child was fate. Even if she didn't have a legitimate younger brother, her grandmother wouldn't put a concubine above her mother's head, and her father wouldn't spoil the concubine and neglect the wife. Therefore, when Jingwan said that her grandfather didn't choose the wrong person for her aunts, she wasn't just saying it. Jingwan didn't say much. In this kind of situation, as one of those lucky concubines and concubines, 9 out of 10 of them were arrogant. If they got what they wanted, they might become even more arrogant. However, if they met a powerful matriarch, it was equivalent to giving birth to a child, and there was nothing for her to do. If she was obedient, she might be able to keep her life. If she wasn't obedient, she might be able to keep the child and leave the mother. This kind of thing couldn't be more normal. Let's not talk about this anymore. It's so boring. What did you bring for me? Let me take a look. There were a few pots of green flowers and plants, big and small. They looked very spirited and made people feel comfortable just by looking at them. They're raised very well. Is there anything I need to pay attention to? What if I don't pay attention to them and they go bad? I know that cousin is a careless person, so these are very easy to raise. Jingwan looked at her with a smile. You've got guts. You dare to laugh at cousin? Yuan Xiaoqiao wanted to tickle her. Jingwan dodged it easily. Cousin, you should wait until your leg is better before we talk about it. Yuan Xiaoqiao was so angry that she pounded the bed and said ruthlessly that when she recovered, she would definitely teach her a lesson. Jingwan saw that she was full of energy and stopped teasing her. Instead, She began to coax her and asked the servant to take out other things. Most girls would like these things. Sure enough, Yuan Xiaoqiao was very happy when she saw them. One had to know that when they were at White Dragon Temple, the simple makeup made by Jingwan gave them a big surprise. Although Jingwan didn't make a lot these days, she prepared most of it to give to her 3 good sisters. Therefore, after distributing it, it wasn't a small amount. It was enough for them to use for a while. Of course, if they were to give it away, it would be a different story. Try it on the back of your hand for 2 days. If there's no problem, use it on other places. And why? I'm worried that there will be problems like redness or rashes. How is that possible? Wan, would you harm me? Yuan Xiaoqiao waved her hand dismissively. It's not like that. Everyone's skin is different. Some things can be used, while others can't. It's like how some people will feel uncomfortable when they touch certain flowers. It's the same principle. I'm worried that you will suffer. There's such a thing? Yuan Xiaoqiao was surprised. Then, she seemed to have thought of something and her expression changed. Wan, I suddenly remembered something, so I won't keep you. You can go back first. I'll apologize to you next time. She lowered her voice. Also, about your engagement, you're really fast. I'll have to ask you properly next time. Jingwan thought that what she said probably made Yuan Xiaoqiao think of something else. She didn't want to stay any longer and got up to leave. After the wet nurse sent Jingwan and the others out and came back, Yuan Xiaoqiao hurriedly said, Wet nurse, do you think that Aunt's problem is related to what Wan said? It's possible. Miss, you mean? Aunt came to see me yesterday. I don't know how many times she cried when I saw her eyes. My heart ached when I saw her. We all know what kind of person Aunt is. She would never do such a vicious thing. Uncle's family actually made a fuss about divorcing her. If it's really like what Wan said, then everything will be solved. Then I'll go find old madam now and tell them about this matter. Okay, you can go, wet nurse. Jingwan left the Yuan residence and went directly to the Zhou residence. Because she had sent the invitation yesterday, although it was a little early, it wasn't considered rude. After learning that Zhou Shuang's eyes could actually see, there was nothing more joyous than this. Zhou Shuang's injuries weren't serious. At this moment, she wasn't lying on the bed like Yuan Xiaoqiao. Instead, she was sitting by the window with a smile on her face. It seemed that she was in a very good mood. Did something good happen? Jingwan walked up to her and teased. Jingwan, you're here. Come and sit down. Jingwan sat down and waved her hand in front of Zhou Shuang's eyes. Zhou Shuang grabbed her hand and said, I can really see. Zhou Shuang smiled sweetly. She didn't look like she was just happy because her eyes had a chance to fully recover. Can you tell me what good news it is? Zhou Shuang's face blushed. Well, there was no need to say anything. Jingwan had already guessed it. After a moment of hesitation, she wanted to share the good news with her friend. She leaned close to Jingwan and whispered, He came to see me. He just left not long ago. Although he only said a few words outside, I'm so happy. Our family was originally discussing the marriage between me and the Lord Chancellor's son. Actually, things were almost done. Originally, I thought that because of my eyes, the marriage would probably be cancelled. I didn't expect that the second day after we came back, the Lord Chancellor's wife personally came and asked me to take care of my eyes. Today, he came in person. He still doesn't know that my eyes are getting better. I originally thought that he was just like that, but now. Very good. This was a typical example of someone who didn't care at first, but was played the tender card when they were weak. After a few words of concern and a promise of never leaving, that little heart of hers began to beat rapidly. In an instant, she fell into the trap of love and couldn't climb back up. These little girls were actually quite easy to fall in love, and were also very gullible. It was just that she didn't know whether the Lord Chancellor's son was sincere, or because of the family's coercion, or because of the good reputation of being affectionate and righteous. Jingwan hoped that she could be the first. Otherwise, after the marriage, if the other party wasn't as good as she expected, she would definitely be more disappointed or even painful. A little hurt from the other party would be 10 times, or 100 times more painful. However, at this time, Jingwan naturally wouldn't pour cold water on her. Little girls who fell into the river of love were similarly unreasonable. If you said that the other party wasn't good, you might have ulterior motives. Perhaps the other party would think that you were sowing discord and couldn't bear to see her well. Good sisters, good girlfriends who turned against each other because of a man. Weren't there many? Perhaps she should take some time to talk to her wet nurse and let them remind her at an appropriate time? However, these words really weren't suitable for an unmarried little girl like her to say. Jingwan suddenly patted her own head. Which woman in the inner courtyard wasn't sophisticated? Even if they hadn't seen the twists and turns of the inner courtyard, they had heard a lot of it. What else could they not think of? After reaching the same point, she no longer hesitated and took out the gift for Zhou Shuang. In Gong Mama's opinion, her miss was good in every way, but sometimes she just loved to worry. And the things that she worried about basically wouldn't happen. With how much the prince cared about her, if she was unhappy, he would naturally help her get rid of the source of her unhappiness. Gong Mama had never worried that her Mrs. Close friends would have a bad life in the future, even if it was Sun Yijia who was in the worst situation right now. Chapter 93. The Lord Chancellor's wife was able to visit the Zhou family on the second day. It was not necessarily because they were so loyal and righteous. It was also possible that someone was involved in this matter. Zhou Shuang took note of some of the precautions that Jingwan mentioned. She even asked Jingwan a lot of questions about skincare. When she was in Bailong Temple, although she was very interested in these, but because of her eyes, compared to Sun Yijia and Yuan Xiaoqiao, she was not so enthusiastic. Now that her eyes were just beginning to recover, she could not wait. The so-called, "a woman looks good for her lover," was not false at all sometimes. However, it was human nature to always hope that the person she liked could see her best side. Therefore, Jingwan did not hide it. However, it was one thing to talk about it, and another thing to do it. And as mentioned before, the method that was suitable for Jingwan might not be suitable for Zhou Shuang. Therefore, Jingwan also warned her to be serious. If she did not make herself more beautiful, but worse, the loss would outweigh the gain. However, thinking that the women here cared about their own appearance, there was no need to be too worried. They would not joke about their own faces, because the more they talked, the more time it would take. Therefore, Jingwan was directly asked to stay in the Zhou family for lunch. After all, Zhou Shuang was still recuperating. Jingwan was also worried that it would take a long time for her to be exhausted. Therefore, she left after lunch. However, she did not expect that on the way back, she met a tiger again. This time, it was not Li Hongyuan, but Sun Yilin. Compared to Li Hongyuan, Sun Yilin was much more courteous. He didn't even get off the carriage. He didn't want to attract too much attention and affect Jingwan negatively. His carriage also didn't have any insignia. It was next to the Luo family's carriage, but one was facing east while the other was facing west. Jingwan sat in the carriage. She was more or less surprised that Sun Yilin pulled her. "May I know what young Master Sun wants?" Sun Yilin was silent for a long time. It was so long that Jingwan thought that he could not speak. Then, his somewhat hoarse and dry voice came. "I heard that Miss Luo is engaged?" Jingwan almost didn't hear the last three words clearly. Her voice was hesitant, soft, and seemed to be mixed with a bit of disbelief. Jingwan was stunned. What was going on? When did she attract such a peach blossom? It wasn't that Jingwan thought too highly of herself and immediately thought of this. It was just that the current secular etiquette was like this. If it wasn't the girl he admired, as long as it was a man with a bit of education, he wouldn't ask another girl such a question in person. But obviously, Sun Yilin's education was absolutely top-notch. To do such a rude thing, he must regard himself as extremely important. She couldn't help but think of the words that Sun Yijia said to her not too long ago. She wanted her to be her sister-in-law and had mentioned Sun Yilin. From the looks of it, it wasn't Sun Yijia's wishful thinking. It was Sun Yilin who had such thoughts, and she strongly supported it. Jingwan fell into silence. The word love was the most difficult to understand. Logically speaking, Sun Yilin only admired her, and she didn't do anything to seduce him. There was no need to care about it. The problem was that he was someone she knew and was the elder brother of her good sister. It was hard to ignore it completely. Miss Luo has a clever heart. I'm sure you understand my thoughts? Sorry. Jingwan paused and spat out these two words. Although it was a little cruel to directly cut off his thoughts, it was taboo to be clingy and ambiguous in this kind of thing. As the saying goes, if you don't make a decision, you'll be in trouble if you don't make a decision. If Jingwan's thoughts were messed up because such an outstanding man adored her and deliberately left him hanging, not only would it be disrespectful to Sun Yilin, but it would also be disrespectful to Chen Jingmin. It might even be a disguised betrayal. Moreover, even if Jingwan admired Sun Yilin, she wouldn't do anything that went against her principles. Sun Yilin smiled bitterly and covered his face with both hands. His heart felt like it was being twisted by a knife, and it was extremely painful. Perhaps he had only liked this young lady before, but after knowing that she was suddenly engaged and would marry another man in the future, that her life would not involve him and that it would be extremely difficult for him to even see her, he finally woke up from his daze. Other than her, he was afraid that he would not be able to place another woman in his heart in this lifetime. He had missed this opportunity just like that. He thought that she was still young. He thought that she had just arrived in the capital not long ago, and even if the Luo family wanted to find a husband for her, they wouldn't be able to finalize a candidate in such a short time. He thought that with his talent, appearance, character, and even his family background, when he went to the Luo family to propose marriage, the Luo family would definitely not object and everything would be done naturally. Looking at it now, it was all because he thought too highly of himself and thought too highly of himself. How could he forget that a truly good young lady would definitely be sought after by hundreds of families? If he had taken a fancy to her, he wouldn't have made his move earlier. Was he waiting for others to fight over her? Look at how smart Chen Jingmin was. He was so stupid. That's right, Jingwan's engagement was so fast. Other than Madame Luo's uneasiness, it could also be that Chen Jingmin and the Chen family wanted to take advantage of the fact that the treasure had not been discovered by more people to hold firmly in their hands. Only then could they be at ease. But why did it have to be these few days? Even if it was 2 or 3 days later, he could still give it a try and fight for a chance. When he found out, it was already a foregone conclusion. He was able to find out about this matter today thanks to his servant. When he was shopping with him on the street, he accidentally bumped into Chen Jingmin, who was happily meeting his friends. Because his friends teased him, he revealed the identity of the girl. As Sun Yilin's most trusted person, he naturally knew his young master's thoughts. How could he not? He almost crawled and rolled back to tell him the news. When he heard the news, he only felt like he was struck by lightning. The only reason he had was to change into an inconspicuous carriage. When he entered the Luo family's house, he did not directly announce that he was looking for Jingwan, using his sister's name. When he found out that Jingwan had gone out, he suppressed the anxiety in his heart and waited, waiting for an opportunity to say a few words to her. But what could he say? Hoping that she would have the same feelings for him? In fact, the result was not unexpected at all. Miss Luo, you're really heartless. But it was precisely because of this heartless nature that he found it even more difficult to part with her. If it was someone else who immediately broke off the engagement the moment he expressed his feelings for her and wanted to marry him, he would most likely disdain her. This was the root of a person's inferiority. Jingwan remained silent. This heartless feeling was also more than passionate. Not to mention the current feudal society, even in her previous life, people who thought they were romantic and passionate were in fact fickle in love. This was something that Jingwan despised the most. This one is saying if Miss Luo breaks off the engagement, this one will go to the Luo family to propose marriage. Will Miss agree? Marriage is a big matter. The parents' orders, the matchmaker's words. In other words, it was not something that she could decide. Sun Yilin could not say whether this answer made him happy or disappointed. Perhaps she actually had a trace of good feelings towards him, but because of the girl's modesty, she gave a proper answer. Or perhaps she really did not care at all, but in order to save her face, she did not say anything that was hard to accept. This one understands. It was rude of me to suddenly look for Miss Luo today. Please forgive me. No, young master does not need to take it to heart. It is rare for Ijia to have a close friend who understands her. I hope that your friendship will not become distant because of this one. If that is really the case, this one will not be able to absolve myself from the blame even if I die 10,000 times. Young master, please rest assured that this will not happen. Of course, this was on the premise that Sister Jia did not let the idea of becoming her sister-in-law become an obsession. That would be for the best. I hope that today's matter will not cause any trouble for Miss Luo. This one will take his leave first. After Sun Yilan's carriage left, Jingwan's carriage also slowly moved, increasing its speed bit by bit. The two carriages were clearly moving in opposite directions. Ah, I did not expect that the famous young Master Lin actually admires our Miss Luo. Qingzhu was so surprised that she could not close her mouth when Sun Yilan came to find her. Now, she could finally speak. Wretched girl, what nonsense are you blabbering about? Can't you just keep your mouth shut? What would happen if an outsider heard this? Qingzhu subconsciously reached out to pat her. Qingzhu felt wronged. This was her personality and she couldn't change it. Because of this mouth of hers, she was often reprimanded by the wet nurse and wet nurse. Fortunately, she had never said anything she shouldn't say outside, and she had Jingwan's protection. That was why she was able to stay in the position of head maidservant. Otherwise, she would have long been kicked out to be a maidservant. Moreover, so what if young Master Lin fancies our Miss Luo? Our Miss Luo is so good, it would not be strange for any young master to fancy her. Qingzhu slapped her own mouth. This servant was wrong. Sister Qingzhu is right. Our Miss Luo is the best in the world. Jingwan did not know whether to laugh or cry. She did not know when the people around her had such thoughts. Don't talk nonsense. What do you mean by the best in the world? I can't afford to be called your Miss Luo. This servant is not talking nonsense. If you don't believe me, you can ask the wet nurse. Does she think so too? Qingzhu said rather unconvinced. Yes. Wet nurse Gong nodded solemnly. She was not exaggerating. She really thought so. This time, Jingwan was really speechless. Fine, fine. Whatever you say. I can't win against you. Just forget about this matter. Don't worry, Mississippi, how could they not know the importance of this matter? A few days ago, when she was stopped by Li Hongyuan, she was accompanied by Qing Lan and Qing Mei. If these two matters collided, she did not know what kind of thoughts they would have. Sun Yilan did not directly return to the Fu. Instead, he let someone drive the carriage aimlessly on the street. He just sat in the carriage silently. The manservant sitting outside and the attendant who was in charge of driving the carriage for him looked at each other and saw the worry in each other's eyes. Young Master's state was really not right. Even if Duke Ding had once asked young Master Lin to give in for the sake of young Master Lin and not let him stand out and let him be a pure scholar and not be able to fulfill his ambitions, young Master Lin would at most be silent. It was not like now dead silence. Although it was a random walk, it was basically some of the places that Sun Yilan often went to on weekdays. The flower market was burned. Even the shops that were not affected had been closed. Moreover, if he went to see the flowers at this time, it might make young Master Lin even more sad. After all, Miss Luo was also a person who loved flowers. Who knew if he would think of her when he saw the flowers? Born in a place like Duke Ding's mansion, all of his parents and brothers were normal people. Only Sun Yilan was clean and honest. It could be said that he was incompatible with them. He was not a normal person. Once, even Duchess Ding suspected that her son had a hidden disease, so she did not even want to arrange a room for him. In fact, Sun Yilan accepted the treatment of the imperial physician without any hesitation. The result was that he was very normal. His likes and dislikes were all elegant and not deliberately cultivated. It was as if he was born this way. In addition to flowers and trees, Sun Yilan's other hobby was nothing more than calligraphy, and rare paintings. When he had nothing to do, he would talk with his friends. Compared with others who talked about the court, the world, and the common people, he was more immersed in the beautiful scenery of mountains and rivers and travel books. After all, he had come into contact with what others said. Only when you really came into contact with it, you would know the hardships and difficulties in it. It was not a matter of a few words of exaggeration, and it was not something that could be solved by a few words of what you would do if you were in his place. Therefore, the places that Sun Yilan often went were actually the places that many scholars like to go, especially when the imperial examination in spring was imminent. Scholars from all over the country gathered together in groups of 3 or 5. They either talked loudly and expressed their ambitions, or whispered to each other and talked about knowledge. In the past, perhaps he would have the mood to quietly listen to their various beautiful visions. But now, when these things entered his ears, he only felt exceptionally irritated. Just as he was about to return home, he suddenly heard the voice of a servant. "Young master, it's that Qin family's young master, Chen Jingmin." Sun Yilin almost subconsciously lifted the curtain of the carriage. He also wanted to see what kind of person would be able to snatch the girl he liked first, and whether he had the ability to match Miss Luo. In other places, there might not be many people who knew Sun Yilin, but there were definitely many people in the vicinity. When he appeared, someone with sharp eyes saw him and hurriedly came up to welcome him. "Young Master Lin, I haven't seen you for a long time. Do you have time today to sit in the building and have a drink?" Only then did Sun Yilin discover that this was the Untitled building. Untitled people were naturally untitled. There were no words on the plaque above the door, only a square seal at the bottom left corner. This was a place that only entertained scholars. Moreover, scholars were not as simple as just knowing a few words. First, they had to prove that they could pass the threshold. There was celestial music. As long as one was able to catch it, they would definitely be able to feast their ears. There was good wine and tea, comparable to the tributes of the emperor. If one had the ability, they could use it as much as they wanted. There were precious paintings, and if one had the ability, they could also obtain them. Even if one could not take them away, they could still feast their eyes. In the backyard, there was a huge library that was all-encompassing and could be copied, and these things were all free of charge. For scholars, the Untitled building was definitely the place that they yearned for the most. Especially for those students from poor families, they could not wait to soak in there for 24 hours a day. Of course, there were also relevant regulations for this situation. Otherwise, this place would be completely occupied by the students from poor families. In addition, the biggest feature of the Untitled building was that it limited the number of people who could enter. In the case that it was full, people could only wait for others to leave before the people behind could enter. Even if it was a person as honorable as a prince, they also had to abide by this rule. Who was it that had such big confidence, such big spending, and dared to make such a rule? On the plaque, there was a seal with the words, "As if Jean is here in person." It was enough to explain everything. Who would dare to act rashly? Some people said in private that perhaps only Jin Qinhuang dared to break the rules here. However, the living king of hell had no interest in this place. This place had existed for several years, but they had never seen a certain person set foot here. Most likely, no one knew that the Untitled building was not the product of Lu Chengdi's whim, nor was it a wise decision. It was purely for his ignorant and incompetent evil creature son to increase his knowledge and cultivation. Lu Chengdi's idea was very simple. It was to let him have more contact with scholars. Maybe he would like to read. As it turned out, Lu Chengdi's idea was too naive. After he was once again angered to the point that he had nothing to say, he simply threw it to Li Hongyuan and let him deal with it however he wanted. In the beginning, there was no name. After that, there was no name. Lu Chengdi ridiculed that Li Hongyuan also had self-awareness. He knew that he did not have much knowledge, so he would not do such a shameful thing like a plaque. But Li Hongyuan's answer once again made him fall backwards in anger. A kin is an uneducated person. Perhaps in the future, I will be able to marry a knowledgeable wife. In the future, let your daughter-in-law do the calligraphy. Lu Chengdi scolded him with a torrent of dog blood. But year after year, he was willing to let his daughter-in-law do the calligraphy, but there was no sign of this daughter-in-law. Li Hongyuan took over the Untitled pavilion, but in Lu Chengdi's view, that evil creature had never cared about it. All the good things inside were given by him, and the people who took care of it were also assigned by him. Lu Chengdi would never know that the people he assigned were all Li Hongyuan's people. Li Hongyuan was the Untitled pavilion's master on the surface, but also its actual master, because many things in the Untitled pavilion were very attractive, not to mention young people. Even famous scholars were very tempted. Therefore, Many calligraphy treasures were left behind. There were also some who knew that this place was closely related to the emperor, and whether they could use this place to attract the emperor's attention and soar to the sky. Therefore, they all displayed their knowledge and did not hold back. It was easy to find talented people with special talents. Li Hongyuan selected some people for his use, and then handed them to Lu Chengdi. Lu Chengdi was complacent that he found another talent who could contribute to the country, but he did not know that these people were loyal to the evil creature he called. Anyway, he had already shown up, and he really wanted to meet Chen Zhengmin, who had already entered the untitled pavilion, so he got off the carriage. There are still seats in the pavilion? Look at what you're saying. You're here. How can there be no seats? Sun Yilin understood. As the saying goes, there are policies from above and countermeasures from below. When a person of high status appeared, even if the pavilion was full, there would always be people who would take the initiative to leave, either to take the opportunity to make friends or out of respect and reverence. He did not notice it before, but it was because he did not care about worldly affairs and was stupid. Sure enough, a person came out of the pavilion and cupped his hands to Sun Yilin. This one has something to do and has to leave. Young Master Lin, please. At the same time, no one else rushed to enter. Sun Yilin nodded. Brother, why don't you leave your name card? We'll have a chat another day. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.